BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag. Last week we did a deep dive before SEC Media Days, and we spoke a lot about LSU's offense. The good, the bad, the ugly, the things that they did excellent in a year ago, the things that they didn't do excellent a year ago, things that they don't necessarily need to improve on, things they did really good on, but a lot of areas of concern like the red zone and so many other things that the LSU offense needed to work on. And I told you last week that this time, next week, meaning today, that we would be talking about LSU defense and really looking into them before we hit SEC Media Days. And there's so many narratives that are flying out there for everything that now we know them to be. LSU, during the offseason, brought in 5 defensive linemen, 5 new defensive linemen from the transfer portal. Jack Pyburn, Sadir Mitchell, Bernard Gooden, Patrick Payton, Jamari Butler are all 5 of the players that LSU brought in defensively from the transfer portal. And now that we have taken a step back, now that we know the outright roster that LSU is going into Clemson with, you went out and got 5 players on the defensive line from the transfer portal. Does that not scream what Blake Baker and this defense felt and this defensive staff felt, with this administration, with this coaching staff felt was the biggest problem defensively? Because it was. Now, you can make the argument, well, Blake, we went out and got a lot of DBs. Yeah, but you went out and got 5 defensive linemen. Only 4 can play along with DBs. You went out and got 5 different dudes, all with experience, whether it be Jack Pyburn, Sadir Mitchell, Bernard Gooden, Patrick Payton, or Jamari Butler. Sadir Mitchell being on the experience level the least of all of those. Guys, LSU has had defensively, and I think that Blake Baker made the case during the season and now going into the offseason, we have to be better up front. The X's and O's are a great thing, but we got to go get some Jimmies and Joes. And you feel like, especially at edge, that you've hit on that with Patrick Payton, Jack Pyburn, Jamari Butler, and now developing a guy like Gabe Rutherford. That is what you feel like you've done. But you go out and you get 2 guys that you think that can provide some pass rush for you outside of Harold Perkins and outside of what you did not get from the interior defensive line a season ago. Guys, you got no push into the pocket a season ago to help out a guy like Braden Swinson, who did some really incredible things. You know, one thing that LSU can tip their cap to and hang their hat on is that you were the top 25 in sacks a year ago, and a lot of that had to do with really some of the play calling that you did last year, but it had a lot to do with number 4 too, and the talent that he possessed. Now, you look at Patrick Payton, who, by the way, on EA Sports College Football the 26, Patrick Payton is damn near unblockable in that game, which makes it so fun to play with LSU defensively. You went out there because you could not stop the run game. You couldn't stop the running back, the quarterback from running the football. And you feel like with having Jacoby and Guillory come back, with having Sadir Mitchell to come back, with having a second year with Ahmad Bro and Don McKinley going into a second year, do you feel the best in reference to the depth that you have on the defensive line than guys, quite honestly, that you've had under Brian Kelly? Because outside of Mekhi Wingo and Jaquelin Roy in year 1, and when Mason Smith did return with Mekhi Wingo and Mekhi Wingo got hurt, guys, depth-wise, you did not do well at all. Then you get into last year where a lot of things for this defense improved. You know, you go from 108th in the country in total defense under Matt House in year 2. You get into the top 75, which still is not good, but at least you made progress from year to year in a first year of a defensive coordinator. Well, that's a little bit promising, because the question becomes, for me, when I look at LSU defensively, and I've made this very public and known, I do think that they can be a top 30 defense going in or this upcoming season. I think that they can be there. I think they are vastly more talented, and I can make the argument the most talented defense that you've had since 2022, when you did go out there and get a lot of transfers again, ironically. I do look at this team up front and say to myself, outside of what you did a season ago, and say to myself, with Braden Swinson, whoever you want to bring up in that, because the talent is there. There are some very talented pieces for you defensively. There are things that this team has got to show that they can do. Guys, number one, in the front seven, they got to show that they can be physical at the point of attack. They have to show with Sadir Mitchell, Jacobian Guillory, Don McKinley, Ahmad Bro, Patrick Payton, Jack Pyburn, Jamari Butler, Gabe Rutherford. They have got to show with the linebackers in Whit Weeks, Keys, West Weeks, whoever it is, they have to show that they're not constantly going to get pushed around in these big, high-profile games like they have been. The number one area that you did the most in, you went out and got Bernard Gooden. You went out and got Sadir Mitchell. You had a 5-star returning in Don McKinley. You got back Jacobian Guillory, who's a 6-year senior. So many different, Ahmad Bro, so many different things that you did to solidify your defensive line that you think for once that you can do something special there. And maybe you can. Maybe you can. Because you're not going to be better defensively until that unit is better. You just simply are not. Guys, you cannot continue. This is not just a one-year Blake Baker thing. It was a multi-year situation of the same thing defensively happening to you. You know, one thing is for sure is we talked a lot about the safety room last year for LSU and 2 years ago with Major Burns and Sage Ryan, because Major Burns and Sage Ryan are not getting blown off the ball 4 or 5 yards off the ball. The run game starts with your front seven. It really starts with your defensive line, but it starts with your front seven. Just because Sage Ryan is not making the tackle to save a touchdown does not mean that they weren't getting blown up front. It's not what that means. Now, there comes a situation where I look at this team and say, okay, I can fully buy into the front seven. At edge, I have fully bought in. I am there. The edge position from a run defense and from a pass rush defense, for me, is in a place where I look at them and say, I feel very confident that they're going to take the next step. You bring in Kyle Williams, who, guys, for me, I don't think Kyle Williams knows less about defensive line play overall than Bo Davis. I wonder if he can communicate it like Bo Davis. But what I saw in spring was I don't know if he can't do that, because it seems like he. What I do think is you're not going anywhere of relevance unless that position group, that defensive line position group, is better than they were a season ago, and they were better 2 years ago. 2 years ago, you had the Heisman Trophy winner and 2 first-round wide receivers, and because of that front seven, guys, you went 9-3. You went 9-3. It wasn't good enough. Now, last year, offensively, there were some – you did get better. But offensively, you weren't better than you were in 2023, and your defensive flaws showed up just as much as it did the previous year in some situations. Gus, last year, you did have some injuries. Jacoby and Guillory going down, Harold Perkins going down. You weren't at full strength. And when you had some of those losses, some of the times you couldn't overcome them. The question for LSU defensively for me are these two things. They all revolve around the front. I do think that this staff defensively has shown at other places up front, under Blake Baker in year 2, with Kevin Peoples at edge, and I get with Kyle Williams, and that is a question mark because the big jump for Missouri was year 2 with Blake Baker. And defensively, the things that they did in the portal, especially at edge, that set the tone for them. Now, I know that Jane Daniels and them up in 2023 went up there and made Blake Baker look like a fool. The problem is that Blake Baker made everybody look like a fool. I mean, Jane Daniels made everybody look like a fool. Made everybody, Nick Saban included. Nick Saban said it was the best player that he saw on the field the last 2 years, and he was right. I think that this team and this entire team going into the season, because of Garrett, which is warranted, because of the wide receivers, which is warranted, and because of the explosiveness offensively that we all think that they could have, I think has overshadowed really what LSU has done up front with the edge unit. I think it's overshadowed. I think because of what they did at edge, I think because of the development that I think that you're going to get in your defensive line, I think that they can be a top 30 unit. Now, guys, the likelihood of you making a massive leap is sometimes rare, but a lot of times with good coordinators, it's not. Guys, can you imagine what Garrett Nussmeier and this offense can do with a couple more stops? What could the defense done a year ago with less turnovers? Everything with this defense revolves in the front seven. Every single thing about it. Now, Whit Weeks is coming off the bowl game injury. Gus, he was your leading tackler a year ago. 125 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. But in some of those games, again, you got pushed around. And I don't think it was all on Whit Weeks, but there were some games that he disappeared. Texas A&M is the game that comes to mind. You're not winning anything of relevance. You're not getting into the playoff unless that unit finally hits. Now, if and when that unit hits, I think it then makes what they did in their DB room that much better and that much more special. Because I know that LSU brought in a lot of different defensive backs. Guys, your entire secondary is going to look completely different than what it did a year ago. Completely different. All new starters basically going to be rolled out there to some extent. Maybe a safety in Jordan Gilbert, maybe Ashton Stamps. But guys, outside of at nickel, you're going to do something different. At star, you're doing something different. You're bringing A.J. Halsey. You're doing something different there. You brought in Mansour Delane. You brought in DJ Pickett. You brought in Jakeem Jackson. There's so many different things that you did in your DB room, which will mean nothing if you can't stop the run. Because you did not, for what it's worth, give up in some of these big games a lot of passing yards. You just got ran all over. And teams are going to, and Clemson is going to, and teams like Florida and South Carolina are going to try and test you again on the ground to see if you've made any adjustments. So we can talk about, even though I think that they're going to be a top 30 unit, even though I think they're one of the better teams in the country, if not the best team in the country at edge, that might go to the University of Texas. But I think LSU's right up there with them. It all revolves around what they do in their front seven. Is Donovan Keys ready to play? Is he ready to go? Do you have both Weeks brothers as starters? I don't know any of those answers. What I do know is I think you got vastly better up front. I think it might be the deepest that you've ever been at defensive tackle in Brian Kelly's era and tenure. I do think that you have the deepest edge room that you've had in your entire existence in the last 4 years of Brian Kelly. It is your deepest room right now. Guys, if Jamari Butler, for what it's worth, who had double-digit 16 tackles for loss last year, if that young man is your third option at edge, hell, it might even be your fourth option with the emergence of Gabe Rutherford. If that is your fourth guy, third or fourth guy, guys, that's a guy that literally did some really great things in the Big Ten. Big Ten won the last 2 national titles and did some good things against those teams that won them. Michigan being included. Michigan had 4 of their 5 offensive linemen drafted, and it was the best unit that they had the year that they won the national title. Guys, go put in that Nebraska-Michigan film. He obliterates them. He is all over the place. That's what starts giving you the excitement of what this team can ultimately do. Now, you did not make a move at linebacker. I did not agree with not making a move at linebacker during the portal, but Blake Baker didn't. I'm going to give him the due diligence of saying to him, hey, man, the first year you were at LSU, Damon Clark happened. How much is that just Damon Clark being Damon Clark? But secondly, I'm going to give him the other shot with Whit Weeks here and these other linebackers. I think it's one of the sleepiest areas on your team where I think you got a lot of talent. You got a lot of speed there. Let's see what happens, and maybe they can do something with it. At DB, I think that you're in an interesting spot. You bring in a lot of experience with Mansour Delane. You bring in a lot of experience with A.J. Halsey. You bring in a lot of experience in some of these moves that you made. And I say a lot of experience. Maybe Cooley, I say he has a lot of experience, but he played a lot for NC State a year ago. And you brought in a lot of talent. You brought in the number 1 corner in the country this year as a freshman in DJ Pickett. And you brought in the top 50 overall player in the country last year who you hope emerges here in year 2 with Deshaun Spears from Denham Springs, the top 50 overall recruit. Guys, I could be convinced that this DB room could either be really, really good or really, really bad. I think Mansour Delane has shown in the ACC when he's gone up against some really talented receivers that he's done some really good things. Jakeem Jackson is someone that Coy Raymond has now recruited twice and wanted to bring him wherever he went. Is he a guy that we can definitely utilize? Just one of these young corners, and I don't even know if you can consider now that he's a junior, Ashton Stamps, to be a young corner. But can a guy like Ashton Stamps stand up? Can Michael Turner, who had a massive spring, stand up? Can P.J. Woodland stand up and make some really good things happen? Guys, I do think that you're more talented with Mansour Delane at corner alone. I think DJ Pickett adds to that level, and I don't know how long you're going to be able to keep number 3 off the field, if we're being honest. Based off of what we saw this spring, guys, he just was really making some really freaking good plays. And if that's the level of play you're going to get from DJ Pickett, well, I think midway through the season, at worst, you're going to be seeing a hell of a lot of situations from DJ Pickett at corner. Regardless, guys, I got to be real with you. I just don't know. There were a lot of great things that this DB room did during spring. A lot of really, really good things. I want to see him again through the fall before we make a determination going into the season. You got some talent there. We'll see. Last but not least, safety. Here's my only thought about safety. It is very simple, and it is this. I just don't see any realm of the imagination where you can be worse. Could it? I don't know if at safety you can be worse than what you were with Sage Ryan and Major Burns. I do not mean that in a wrong way to Major Burns or anybody. Guys, you were god-awful. You were horrible. Even with the front 7 getting blown off the ball as often in some of these games as they did. Even with that, guys, the safety position is the last line of defense, and they did not make enough plays to justify being in the uniform that they were in. Didn't justify it. It just didn't. I like A.J. Halsey a lot. We've seen A.J. Halsey literally against us in a smaller school run down Jaden Daniels. How many people can say that's played LSU under Brian Kelly? Not many. Not many. Ran him down. Deshaun Spears is the X factor. He is the X factor. I don't think that Jordan Gilbert starting for you is what LSU needs to do. I don't think that you just take a starting position away from him, but Deshaun Spears made way too many plays in spring for you to not give this kid a shot. Hopefully he does that again in the fall, and you're off to the races. The kid's rangy. Can he cover? Can he cover? 6'3", 210. Let's hope that he can do that. And if, God forbid, you got a 6'4" corner, you can have a lot of size, Mega Pauls, but you can have a lot of size out there. Guys, regardless of all of that, I just believe that there's no way that you can look at this team defensively and say to yourself, you don't feel better about what you've done along the defensive front. You feel like Whit Weeks gets better in a real true year 2 of starting. And guys, can you really be that much worse at safety? Top 30 unit defensively might be a little bullish because you got to do a lot of really good things to get there. But guys, if your front seven does not perform, you ain't going anywhere. You're just not going to go anywhere. And all the statistics, all the shit that we talk about, every single little detail about, hey man, we talk about the same things over and over and over and over and over and over and over again about the offense, about the defense, about the special teams. Guys, the reason we do that is because it fucking matters. It's why you're losing. So you can hate the repeat. It's just the truth. So when you go into SEC Media Days next week, we talk about the storylines for you offensively. If anybody going into SEC Media Days wants to ask Brian Kelly a question, he's coach, hey, what are you going to do in your front seven to get better to stop some of these teams from running all over you? It's got to be the question. And he basically could say, have you seen our edge players? Now I answer the question.